I'll get started. I got my thumb up. That means we're recording. We're broadcasting at least, or something like that. All right. We're going to be on Daniel 1. We're going to start really at verse 8 this time. And we already did about their name change thing last week. And now we get into this meal thing. So,
Okay, I have a question.
oh, a question, okay.
So with the name changes, on VeggieTales, they still call Daniel, but they call the other three Shadrach.
I know. Isn't that strange, though, how that happens? You guys have had, I said, Hananiah, Azariah, Mishael would have no idea what I was talking about. I wouldn't have known either because we never known by that name. But that is their name. And yet Daniel, if we said Belteshazzar, we said who? It's like, no, Daniel. So why that has passed down that way seems strange to me, too. Why we keep Daniel's real name, but Hananiah, Azariah, Mishael, we don't keep their real names. We keep the name that was given to them. And I don't know why we've done that, but that's just how it's passed down. We all grew up that way, knowing Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. No, not in the history of why we retain those names and not the others. And I told you what the Jews do. Jews will not say Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego.
Even out at Sight and Sound at the Daniel production,
Uh-huh.
they tried to use the foreign names a lot, but for the
Okay.
Daniel, they bounced back and forth between both names.
Like the Bible does.
Right.
Yeah.
The way that the book is written, though, that
Yeah.
Daniel uses his name, like it's used as Daniel in the book.
Right.
Then Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego are the names used predominantly throughout.
Yeah, and now he does comment. Our Lutheran commentator does say something about that, and he says that as Daniel's writing, and I don't really understand the gist of what he's trying to get at here, but he says as he's writing, whenever it's something in the official capacity as working for Nebuchadnezzar, the Babylonian government, they use their Babylonian names, and Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego are usually in that capacity, whereas Daniel he sees visions and he goes has dreams, and so his name can go both ways, right? And so that's kind of the gist behind that. Yes, their God-given name, in other words, yeah. Yes, he does write to himself as Daniel, but again, when it's in the official capacity, he will say Belteshazzar, and obviously when he's quoting Nebuchadnezzar, who calls him Belteshazzar, he's quoting him, so he uses that name, right? But see, that's the point I'm getting at, is that if he didn't write this until Nebuchadnezzar's long gone, he didn't write it till 538, 539, something like that. And the Babylonians are even gone. Why does he care what they think? Why is he worried that there might be a repercussion from it? There won't be, because they're all dead. So it just seems that he's just doing that from the official capacity to be just kind of faithful to his position in the state and then his position with God. It's just interesting. We don't know. Obviously, it doesn't change anything. That's just the way it is. All right. So let's get to this thing about the meal fellowship here, kind of thing. All right. So I'm going to read again how he says it, his translation, and we're going to do it just verses. I'll just do 8 through 10 first. It says, Daniel made up his mind that he would not defile himself with the king's delicacies in the wine that he drank. So he sought permission from the chief of the eunuchs so that he would not defile himself. God gave Daniel favor and compassion before the chief of the eunuchs. Now the chief of the eunuchs said to Daniel, I am afraid of my lord the king, who assigned your food and your drink. Why should he see your faces looking more gaunt than the other young men who are your age? You risk my life before the king. All right, so here we go. Let's get flow into this now. As we do, we kind of need to look at it this way, because this is how this episode becomes very relevant for today. This is like the text to look at on how do Christians remain Christian in an ungodly world, and even then in an ungodly government. Okay. But it doesn't have to be that. It can be in a company or something like that. How can you retain and maintain your integrity as a Christian and yet have to have this pressure put on you to conform to everybody else around you? Like I know big companies will have their sensitivity awareness seminars so that you can be sensitive to transgenders or LGBTQ. And if you don't take it, you get fired. That's what I told. I don't know that, but I've heard that. Is that true? Okay. And if you protest it, you'll get fired. Okay. So that's something that is like, okay, how do you do this? Or how do you maintain your pro-life position in a company that is outspoken about abortion? Okay, those are illustrations. So this is a good episode to look at to help us with this. All right, so we'll start with the kind of the historic aspect to it. All right, so Daniel, he, Hananiah, Azariah, Mishael, all four of them are lumped together with all the other conquered peoples, okay, who have their nice, smart, intelligent young men that are brought in to be trained. Okay, they're all together. They all come from various cultures, various belief systems. All right, now as they're brought in, they're brought to school. This is their schooling. And what's being done now is Nebuchadnezzar wants them to be well trained in Babylonian culture, and so that they'll be able to be working in a governmental capacity. Okay, that's what they're going to be trained to do. All right, so he's going to treat them well, and how is he treating them well here? He's not being mean and rude and disrespectful to them. He's giving them the best. He gives them what he has at his table. He's getting the best food and wine that the king himself gets, these young men are getting. All right? You would think that'd be a great thing, right? And it would be normally. But why is it not a great thing for Daniel, Hananiah, Azariah, Mishael? Yeah, ceremonially unclean. Okay? Now, another thing here that to point out is, remember, they're probably 15 years old. Okay? They're making a stand before the most powerful man in the world, who's a very cruel man. Not that they're doing it to his face, but they're making this stand, and they're saying we can't do that. Okay? But now how is Daniel, how does he display diplomacy as he does this? This is what we want to look at. How is he displaying this? Okay, I should have gone. I went a little bit ahead of myself. Okay, so the reason why they don't want to do this is because the meat has probably been sacrificed to the pagan gods before it's offered to them. That was just standard in that day. Paul dealt with that too many centuries later in Roman culture. Okay, so they don't want to do that, and as well as the meat would be unclean in other respects because it may not just be beef or lamb. It could be pork, all right, which absolutely is forbidden. Or many unclean animals, but again, it's the king's table, so it's going to be the nicest food, okay? But another thing about it is, how particular was it though, and is it for Jews to prepare meat that's even clean? Yeah, and it cannot have what in it? It cannot have blood in it. All right, so who knows what this looked like? All right, so there's not just the fact that it may have been pork or something like that, or even offered to a pagan god, but even how it was prepared would have made them unclean. All right.
I think that what's interesting about the dietary laws is it was only to set them apart from your neighbors, but it has a lot of health.
Yeah, exactly. Right, yeah. That's definitely true. It's a healthier diet. Right. Now, there's another aspect here, though, that is kind of intriguing that he brings up. He says, but why did they end their protest at that point? just with the meat. Because, I'm looking at, because, you know, grain is often, before it was served, is also offered to the pagan gods. Okay. Yeah, well, I know, but even everything may have been offered. So, but here's the point. He can't go on a total fast, right? He has to have something to eat. Okay, so and even then, later on in the book of Daniel, he'll drink wine. Daniel will drink wine later on. It's mentioned. But so it's just here. It's just kind of intriguing how this is playing itself out. Why only these things is he protesting? Oh, or they protesting? All right. Now, so but what okay, first of all, he says, okay, I mean, I should go back and see how he really, okay, yeah, that's how it is in verse 8. Does Daniel demand that he be accepted for his religious beliefs? Yeah. Yeah, well, yeah. Right. Yeah. All right. Yeah. So we haven't got that far into it, but that's exactly it. But first of all, he's not one of these woke culture people who says you must accept the way I am and believe I am. Okay. He doesn't do that either, right? And so he asks for permission. He just simply goes to the chief of the eunuchs, the one responsible for all of them. He says, would it be possible for us to not eat that and just eat vegetables? Okay. Yes. Oh, yeah. But first of all, he does it in a very gentle way, not in a very demanding, obnoxious, rude, disrespectful sort of way. So the reason why I'm saying that is because follow that. Because if you are in a position like that ever in government or in a company, you don't approach it in a very arrogant, I'm a Christian, I don't do that stuff. Okay? You do it in a gentle way, in a way that's meant to be winsome. Okay? You're not trying to be obnoxious. You're trying to do this in a way that allows the other person to save face in a way, or allows the other person to save his position of authority over you, because remember, as you look at this, the chief of the eunuchs says, hey, yeah, it's no problem with me, but I'm afraid of my Lord, the king. If I don't give you what he tells me, I'm dead. Okay, I'm dead. I mean, that's it. I'm dead. I know I can't do this. But there is a line in here that is kind of good, and this, and not saying that this would always happen in anyone else's case or everyone else's case. But if you looked at verse 9, how is God working kind of behind the scenes here? Yeah, he softened the eunuch's heart. In other words, God himself has already made, or the chief of the eunuchs, he's already made him kind of look favorably towards the four Hebrews. He's kind of given them, a little favor. I don't know how that works, but God was kind of doing that. So I would think for us, that would be how we would approach it. And this is why you pray for those in authority over you, whether it's in government or in your own business. Pray that God would give them a soft heart. So that before you approach them, pray, and it doesn't say Daniel did that, but that's how we would do it. Pray, God, give this person an understanding, a patient, gentle, open mind to what I'm going to suggest, okay, before you actually approach them. I mean, it seems like a good, valid way of doing it. Okay, all right, so again, the chief of the eunuchs says, I can't, I'd love to do this for you, basically is what he's saying, but you risk my life. If I were to do this, you risk my life. So, okay, so then Daniel, so then we get to verse 11, okay, and here's how it reads, verses 11 through 14. Daniel said to the superintendent, whom the chief of the eunuchs had assigned over Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, please test your servants for 10 days. Give to us some of the vegetables, and let us eat them, and water, and let us drink it. Observe our appearance and the appearance of the young men who eat the royal delicacies. Then according to what you see, do with your servants. So he listened to them in this matter and tested them for 10 days. All right, now this is a different guy. All right? This is the lesser guy. So the chief of all of them says, I'm sorry, I can't do that. But but Daniel's not going around and trying to subvert him and go around him. You know, he is basically, the indication seems to be that that guy says, talk to this other guy. He might be able to do something for you. Okay, I can't in my position because I answer to the king. Okay, and so I can't do that. But this other guy, going down the ranks here, this other guy, he might be able to help you out. So talk to him. All right? So he talks to this other guy. Now, how does Daniel present it? Does he get bold and arrogant, obnoxious and rude and disrespectful? Of course not. What does he do? Yeah. Well, he comes up with plan B. Yeah, let's do a test. Okay? Let's just do a test. Okay? Let's just do a 10-day test. No harm. There's no harm in 10 days. So this is the idea. You come up with a plan B. A plan B that's palatable. You get that about food, palatable? You like that? You get that? It's palatable to everybody, okay? And no one's going to come out bad in this way. So he comes up with the plan B. The plan B is, let's just take a test. Let us eat what we are allowed to eat according to us, okay? Let us do that, okay? Just for 10 days. No harm done. Because the king won't know. It's not like you're trying to be a secret to the king, but he obviously doesn't need to know all that. It's just 10 days. This is the whole 3-year process. So we're just talking 10 days. It's not a big deal. All right? And the guy said, okay, we'll let you do that. All right? One thing about this, too, that's fascinating, what he says about with the food that is just let us eat vegetables, it doesn't mean just raw vegetables. It actually means vegetarian plates. Okay? Meal that is a vegetarian meal. So it's not like he's just eating raw vegetables, which is fine too, but he's actually having food prepared for him. That's apparently how the word is explained, not the word with the word of the vegetables. He says that it pertains to a whole dish of vegetables, like vegetarian lasagna. Okay. So that's what that is. All right. So now, catch this though. The test is for 10 days. All right, now think about this. This is not hard to do, but think about this. Do you really think that if you just change your diet for 10 days, there'd be a noticeable difference? No. So what is Daniel actually believing? God's going to do something through just this short little 10-day test. God's going to somehow make us, the 4 of us, shine, right? He's going to somehow come to our aid, defend us in this manner, and he's going to make it happen.
Because if he'd asked for something longer, he'd like to not just
Right, exactly. And so the other guy says, 10 days, nothing's going to happen in 10 days, okay? And so the other guy's not worried. He's not out anything. It's not going to hurt him in the least but to do this. So that was the point. So give me a 10-day test.
So because this is the first mention of a number of days, we're going to take this literally?
Well, this will be a literal 10 days, yeah, right. So, okay, this becomes a fascinating aspect of Daniel. When do you take numbers literally? Right? Well, yeah, but that's not necessarily, that's at the very beginning of the whole book of the Bible, okay, when we talk about the first mention, law of first mention. Usually, when you're talking about an historic event that's measuring time, then it will, not a vision. That's what I'm saying. A vision is an historic event, but it's actually couched in the words of a vision. So then things are taken in a more figurative manner. Okay? But you got 10 days mentioned here, so the 10 days would be understood.
10 days can change a lot in your diet. I mean, doing a 10-day liver cleanse,
Well, yeah, right.
a 10-day removing of certain things from your diet can make a remarkable change in your appearance, in your skin, and
Yeah.
everything. So
Okay.
Or go back to the Atkins diet. You did the Atkins diet solid for 10 days.
Yeah.
You have a ketosis shift.
Yeah.
And you can end up being lethargic
Yeah, right.
And they would have been going on to ketosis, where these guys would have been bright and
Okay. That, yeah, I understand.
proteins, because they had chickpeas and lentils and
Oh, yeah, right.
that's a Middle Eastern diet.
Right. Yeah, okay. Well, it will, but I didn't think it'd be that noticeable of a change.
Well, especially if you compare the other side of probably, I mean, think of somebody you meet who's been on drugs for 10 days.
Yeah.
I mean, the comparison, one,
Maybe they all had alpha.
Oh, that alpha gal. Okay.
we don't know exactly, back then they did use substances.
Yeah, right.
But that's part of the culture and the tradition.
Right. Yeah.
They don't
Okay.
say how much they are defiling, right? Because they could have been putting in off in their wine. They could have been putting other substances and stuff.
Right. Yeah. And again, obviously, though, the food that they are supposed to be eating was supposed to be considered the best food, the resto, because it's the king's table. Okay, so it's again the what is considered the best food, the most. I don't know if it means the most nutritious, but the delicacies. In other words, yeah, primary. Yeah, right, exactly, right.
I don't think you can discount God's influence here, because you don't get fatter on a vegetarian.
Right. You can?
Look at a cow.
Yeah, I know. I really haven't either.
I don't think you can discount the fact that God did interfere in this, was the point.
Yeah. Well, although it really doesn't say they were fatter, it's just that at the end of. I know. Here's literally, though, at the end of 10 days, their appearance was observed to be better than, and they were healthier than any of the young men who had been eating the royal delicacies. So just healthier. They do look healthier. Okay. And it is a noticeable thing. Okay. All right. And it will be a literal 10 days. But there's going to be another mention of 10 in this very chapter that's going to be interesting, because now, when is it literal? When is it figurative? Okay. And so let's kind of move into that. All right. So, so it has to be a set time frame. In this case, it's the 10 days. All right. So after the 10 days is up, okay. So we move on. I read that, verse 15. Okay, verse 16. So the superintendent permanently took away their delicacies and the wine for their drink, and only gave them vegetables. All right, so he was fully convinced. And now his point is the king's not going to check up on them. The king's just going to look at the condition of these young men, and he's going to see, hey, these four are great. You're doing a great job, whoever superintendent that you are. You're doing a great job with these guys. All right, so he comes out ahead too, right? The superintendent, he's not going to be hurting. He'll look good this way too. All right. Send all the meat back to his family. Take home. Okay. So in verse 17, as for these four young men, God gave to them knowledge and insight into all kinds of literature, as well as wisdom, and Daniel understood every kind of vision and dreams. All right, so that they add that at the end here now of this section. Okay, now this is important because we want to look at these terms again, because these are terms that actually were in the book of Proverbs. All right, but note this is actually important to note. Did they actually just naturally have these abilities of knowledge, insight, and all kinds of literature, wisdom, and then Daniel seeing understanding visions? No, it says God gave them. All right, so God had uniquely blessed these four young men, and it just wasn't that they were exceptional. Their integrity is exceptional. They did that on their own. They stood up and did what was right, even in the face of this pressure, and even though they're only 15-year-olds. They did this. They were willing to take the chance, or not take a chance. They were willing to trust that God would protect them. All right? All right. But the other parts, God gave these gifts to them. Knowledge and insight and wisdom. Now, you need to understand, this isn't just knowledge and insight and wisdom into God's Word, because what are they going to be doing for the rest of their lives? Yeah, they'll be administrators in the kingdom of the left, we call it, which is the political kingdom, not in the kingdom of the right, which is God's kingdom. They're going to have to run matters of state. But they're going to be able to run matters of state according to true wisdom and knowledge and insight, which only God has. So they will be needing to use their proverbial proverbs, okay, have to use what Solomon taught a long time ago. They have to be able to use all of those features in their day-to-day living and their governing. For Daniel's going to do it for 80 years. Okay, 70 years, 75 years. He's going to be doing it this way all the time. And again, just because you are put into a position of authority or leadership in a secular corporation or in a secular government doesn't mean you leave out the true faith and the true wisdom of God. In fact, God's wisdom is used for that in that area. And so that's what you need to acknowledge there about what God gave to them. Now, God gave only to Daniel the ability to interpret visions and dreams. Only Daniel had that. And only God gave it to him. He didn't have it. And in fact, you're going to hear it later when he's interpreting Nebuchadnezzar's dream. He says, no one can do this. Only God can. So I can't do this. Only I can because God gives me the ability. I can't do it either. He's not saying, I'm the scholar student here by my own abilities. I'm the scholar student by the gift of God. Okay, but it is the idea that when they are put to the test and later in life in their administrative abilities, they will be competent and able, not because they were trained in Babylonian culture, but because God gave them knowledge and wisdom and insight. So that will separate them also from the rest of them. And I'll say this now because I might forget to say it later. And later on, as we go through the book of Daniel, anytime all the wise men of the kingdom were brought before the king, Daniel's never with them. He's always separate from them. Okay? Now, if he really was with them, we don't really know, but what you're reading here, he's always separate from them. And then he becomes the head of them, too, which is what makes them jealous, okay? But he's never one of them. He works with them, and eventually he'll work over them, but he's never one of them. So he's in the world, but he's not of the world, right?
So it's like they bring the whole world to an SET in and say, okay, how do you fix this? But you got the private contractor down the street.
Okay.
He turns around and he ends up waddling in and fixing it.
Yeah, right, yeah.
Putting it in the modern context.
Well, yeah, but except that, no, not except that, but yeah, because this private person somehow had been instructed and gifted, I guess, by God. Yeah. And that's the point, because, okay, well, let's just do that, because that's where we get to this now. We're at that point in the text where, okay, so at verse 18, at the end of the days, okay, that's into those 3-year time frame, that the king had said to bring them, the chief of the eunuchs brought them before Nebuchadnezzar. The king spoke with them, and none of them were found like Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. So they served the king. In every matter of wisdom and understanding that the king sought from them, he found them 10 times better. See, there's the 10 again. 10 times better than all the magicians and soothsayers in his entire kingdom. And now Daniel remained there until the first year of King Cyrus. All right, so the 3 years is up. So let's say they're 18 years old now. 3 years is up. They've gone through all their training. It's graduation day. But you don't graduate unless the king says so. All right? So imagine this moment, okay? Really seriously imagine you're 18 years. You're not a 22 college grad. You're an 18-year-old high school grad, okay? And you're brought before the most powerful man in the world, who is a very cruel man, can lose his temper just like that, supposedly what they say, and is an absolute totalitarian ruler, which means there's no appeal. If he says you're dead, period. And Daniel will say that later, by the way. That's how we know that, because Daniel will say that to King Belshazzar at the very end with the writing on the wall. He says if he wanted someone dead, they were dead. If he wanted them to live, they were alive. If he wanted this, this. Whatever the king wanted, he got. So now you're brought in. Can you imagine the pressure? I mean, this is like defending your doctoral dissertation before this faculty, okay? But now it's the king who doesn't just say you flunk. Now, I'm not saying he'd probably kill him, but he's just saying that who knows? But he's just saying you're going to have to answer to him. All right. So you also imagine being the guy which is Ashpenaz, I guess. You're Ashpenaz, and you're bringing these 4 guys in there, and you are also on trial because these last 3 years was under your control. All right, so these guys better do good. All right, so you're kind of nervous if you're Ashpenaz. You're nervous. How are these guys going to perform? Okay, so I would think this is worse than being on stage preparing for judges on American Idol, right? Or America's Got Talent. You know, you got to be even better than that. Okay, so there they are. All right, so now who does the exam? The king himself. What does this tell you about Nebuchadnezzar? Well, he's not all just brawn.
He's got brains because he's got to be able to tell them with a little smoke up his butt.
Yeah, exactly. He's got to know how they ask the questions that are so up there that they have to rise to that. Yeah. So Nebuchadnezzar, I mean, we'll probably never see him because I doubt he's in heaven, but we're kind of hoping he was, but there's debate on that, but doesn't really look like he is. But we'll never really know then. But how awesome would it be if we had a report on this guy? He was an incredible man. I mean, not that we just need to praise a pagan guy, but he was smart. He asked the questions. All right? I just think that's impressive. Oh, yeah, he knew. Oh, yeah. Well, and you know, they also know he's smart because Babylon was built, and he'll say this, and this is when he goes crazy in chapter 5, is because look at this great Babylon that I built by my own abilities and all that. You know, the Hanging Gardens, everything, and you know, what they know about it today, you know, how they were able to get water in there and all that. It's just like, he's phenomenal in his abilities. Yeah. Well, we're going to hear later when we get to the golden statue. The walls, I'll tell you this now, it's fascinating. The walls are like 300 feet high. And at least 50 feet wide. That'd be very wide. But they say you get, now it's funny because sometimes you never know, some people are now just throwing out numbers because I always heard they could get 4 chariots side by side running the walls. But then another one said 6 chariots. So he's like, okay, do we just throw out numbers now or what? Was it 6 or was it 4? Because that's a big difference there. But imagine 4 chariots.
Depends on how much room you want them to.
Yeah, that's true, right. But again, they're saying the walls are roughly 300 feet high. Stand at the goal line of the football field and look up, you know, to the very other end, and that's just rock. And it's at least 50 feet wide, too. The gates were like, I think they said the bronze gates were like 100 feet tall. Okay. And it's like, oh man, that's the city. And it's like 50 miles in circumference. 50 miles in circumference. Okay. Close to that, something like that, yeah. But how long would it take to build that by hand, right? Okay. But he built that. He built that city. Yeah. Oh, right. Oh, yes, yeah, exactly. And in fact, so massive was the city that they were never worried of being conquered, because even if an invading army laid siege to the city, which you mean you just starve them out, the invading army would starve before they would, because they had 20 years of rations. I mean, they had their survival kits there, you know, those packages that last 20 years. They had 20 years worth of rations for a city of, I don't know how many 100,000 people were in that city. And they even had enough space in there that they could continually grow wheat every year. They had fields in there that could grow wheat in there. Okay. In fact, when he goes crazy, he's probably somewhere in one of those areas. I'm not really sure. They don't. I take that back. He might not be there. He may have been outside the city. But that's how big the city was. He built it so that the Euphrates River would run in through the city, so they would always have a water supply too. All right? That's why you can never defeat it by just laying siege to the city. But there's no Babylon, because that was the prophecy of God. He says, what it is, this is, and there's kind of hints of this in Daniel, at least what he's saying, of the Tower of Babel. Like, because it's the same spot. It's like, man, look, because man in Tower of Babel was like, look what we can do when we work together. God says, yeah, look what I can do too. You're just done, okay? And so Babylon's the same way. Look what we can do. And that's why Babylon in the New Testament, book of Revelation, becomes the city of the pagans, okay? Of the people who are opposed to God, because it's, look what we can do by our own power. We can be our own God. We can create this huge environment that we don't need God for. All right. So Nebuchadnezzar tests them. All right. So now these four guys are standing for, imagine that now. You're having to answer these questions. And they just fly right through this test. Okay. So much so that Nebuchadnezzar is so impressed by them, because how much smarter are they? 10 times. Now, is that a literal statement you think there? No. I mean, it's like a scholastic aptitude test. I mean, can you get... I mean, because the other guys are, yeah. But the other guys are smart, and you can't get, 10 times greater than that necessarily. So it's meant to be. They went off the charts. Okay, they tested off the charts. It's just way above all the rest. Right, and so that's why when we do the 10 times is important, because we're going to get the mention of the word times a lot more in these visions coming up. Times, and half a times, and 70 times, and in this 7 times. And we're going to say all this is okay. All right, is it meant to be literal or figurative? Because we're talking about visions. Okay. Yeah. For times, yeah, right. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, right. All right. So. All right, so now, because they excelled so well, what does Nebuchadnezzar do? Yeah, it keeps them right up there. He puts, these are the guys. These are the guys. We want them. And he puts them in the high-ranking positions. Now, not necessarily the highest ranking yet, but they're in high-ranking positions. And so now here's what we got: a modern or a New Testament passage. Jesus says, "To him to whom much is given, much is required or expected." All right, these four were given much by God, and now they are going to be required by God to perform much, and they will. They will definitely do that. Nebuchadnezzar then really likes these guys. I mean, they're their teacher's pet now. I mean, he likes these guys. All right, you have to note that, because that's going to play itself out later on. He has no qualms about them being Jews, the conquered people. He's going to use these guys because they have proven themselves worthy of his trust. And obviously, throughout the whole thing, they are noteworthy in the sense that they're respectful of him. They're not arrogant and rude. Even though they're going to maintain their faith, they're going to be very respectful of the king. Okay, and they can do this. They do their job. All right. Again, Daniel ends this chapter by saying that he remained there until the first year of King Cyrus. So if this is, if they were taken in captivity in 604, so this was 601 when this test happened, then King Cyrus, the first year of King Cyrus was 538, 537. Okay, so it's roughly 70 years. Okay, so Daniel, it doesn't say we don't know about the other four. After the fiery furnace, we don't really hear about them anymore. The other three, we don't hear about them anymore. Daniel is the one that remains that way throughout, okay? And so he will be in a position of leadership. How many people in government can stay in government for 70 years? I knew that's coming up. Okay. Yeah, right. But yeah, I know you got your lifetimers. But that's the idea behind this: is that Daniel, now, I do have to kind of retract that a little bit, because what will happen is Belshazzar, and that's the famous writing on the wall passage, okay? He doesn't even know who Daniel is anymore. So Daniel has probably been somewhat retired after Nebuchadnezzar, maybe by another king or two. There's like 4 more kings. He gets retired, then he's brought out of retirement when King Cyrus is king. But so he's there, but he's not maybe actually acting in an official capacity all these 70 years. But he is certainly doing during Nebuchadnezzar's reign. All right, and that's exceptional, okay? So we'll probably just need to quit there. I only got a couple more minutes, but we don't really want to start the next section. Although he does have this one little, I said this, just say it again though. Let's see. He has a little excursus in his commentary called Daniel's View of the Exile, okay? It's interesting that nowhere in Daniel does God call Israel his people. He never uses that term in Daniel. Nor does he use his covenant name Yahweh. Okay? And it's like, okay, they have broken covenant with him. Okay? So Yeah, exactly. That's why Nebuchadnezzar was allowed by God to conquer them, because they had broken his covenant. In fact, the other commentator, I was looking at the non-Lutheran one, and I thought it's kind of cool how he does this, okay? So it's not everything they say is bad by any means, okay? He references Hosea. Do you remember the story of Hosea? With Gomer and all the 2 kids he has. What are the 2 kids' names? One of them is Lo-Ami. That's what we're going to look at. Lo-Ami. Lo in Hebrew means not. Is people, and E is my, not my people. All right. He said, and that's what God calls them. And then he says, but you will be called my people later. Okay. And Paul will reference this in the famous section in Romans 9 through 11 when he's talking about Jews and Israel, about Israel being saved and all that. He uses this too. But he uses it in the spiritual sense, not in the physical descent of Israel. But so they're really Lo-Ami right now. They're not my people now. But I have a remnant. See, that's the key. If you understand a lot of Old Testament history, there's always this remnant. There's always the faithful few. And the faithful few are faithful. We know 4 of them. Okay? Now, Ezekiel and Jeremiah are living. Now, Jeremiah will die soon, but Ezekiel, I don't know how long he's living, but there are other people living, because eventually you're going to have Nehemiah and Ezra, because that's at the end. Daniel will know them too, because they're at that time. So the book of Daniel covers a lot more in the Old Testament than you may realize. Not in the historical books as far as 1st and 2nd Kings and Chronicles, but after that, okay? He covers a lot more of these people. But they are Lo-Ami right now. But even though they're not my people, God still has a plan for his people. And that plan is now going to be carried out. So as I did say before, if you read Ezekiel and Jeremiah and even parts of Isaiah that is prophesying this, they look at this whole captivity thing from what we would say the negative side, the judgmental side. Okay, God's punishing his people. Daniel's looking at it really from the New Testament side. God's going to save his people. Right? And so the exact event can be seen in 2 different ways. Both of them are right. Okay? There's a law and a gospel. There's a law and gospel and a lot of different things. Like the cross is both law and gospel. Depends how you look at it, right? And so that's how when you read Daniel, if we were doing a side-by-side study of Jeremiah, this is like, wow, they're talking about the same thing, but one's really depressing, one's actually exciting. But they're the exact same thing. Okay, different events, kind of, but the exact same time frame. Kind of neat how that works. All right, but that we'll go with that then. But that's Daniel's view on this. I could say a lot more, but I don't want to just ramble on. So next week we'll start with Daniel 2, and the famous dream, one of the famous dreams in Daniel, and the statue, this big giant statue. Okay, this gets really exciting stuff now at this point. Okay, actually it was before already, but it really gets exciting now. All right, so we'll pick it up in Daniel 2 next week. Let's close with prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, we are so grateful that you give us your word and the opportunity to study your word. And like with Daniel, Hananiah, Azariah, and Mishael, we recognize that we need your spirit to grant us the knowledge and the insight and wisdom to understand your word. So we pray that you will lead us by your spirit and enlighten us, that we may know your truths and that we may grasp the importance of these truths for our own lives, and so that we can also live this holy, noble, respectful life of integrity in this world, in this dark world, that we may be that light shining that brings hope to this world. Through Jesus we ask this. Amen.